Yo, my tag is Eridat. And let's just keep things simple. I'm here to talk about fighting games. I'm just really passionate about them. And what I want to do is talk about a lot of pain points mid-level players like me and others have gone through. Because there's not a lot of mid-level content for fighting games on YouTube. I want to change that. I also just want to, talk about like my certain pieces on fighting games and where my mind is at with them. And while I'm nowhere near top level, hell, not even close, I do consider myself pretty good though. It just feels good to finally, get the stuff out of my head on fighting games. I think that's just how all it is. If people like this content, then I don't know. Honestly, I'm gonna try and make more. All depends on whether I burn out on these, but we'll see where we go from there. My only show is that you guys follow me on Twitter, so you guys can make me see all the dumb shit that comes to my brain, and I'll fill your feed with random retweets that I do. So a lot of my friends who play fighting games will come to me about someone who plays random and how tilted they got playing this person, especially if it's an online match. Oh, dude, it's just so random, bro. He's just mashing. I don't know what to do against him, bro. He's just so random. This match is so boring. He's so random. Like, I bet we've all been through that, and I'm sure, like, heard a friend go through it, right? But I asked myself, why are we getting tilted at this? And I mean, it's a natural feeling, right? I've gone through very similar things when starting out. And so don't blame yourself if you're someone who, gets tilted at this. But why? Why do we, right? If you think about it, fighting games have no hard-coded rules on how to win a match. It can happen through any means. The moment you're dropped into a match, what is your objective? Objectively, and pun not intended, objectively, what is the objective? Bring that motherfucker's HP down to 0, bro. Like, that's all it is. That's all it is. There's no correct way we should be doing it. And that's something I really want to put emphasis on. There's no correct way people should be playing fighting games. But we are, especially on the mid-level play, have this idea of what is correct or how we should play. And it could be due to a multitude of factors, right? We see how top-level players, they play against each other, and that's how we believe we should be emulating our style of play. We see them and want to emulate what we see because that's the very tippity top. That's where we want to be. And that's not wrong. Or maybe we follow YouTube tutorials or educational content for fighting games that teach us concepts and strategies that we should be implementing if we want to improve, which is also not wrong. That's something you should be doing. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. Or maybe you have one last final option, because this is the one that really made me question if I'm playing fighting games right, is that I had the adrenaline rush, that huge dopamine hit, or a really close game where I felt both me and my opponent were just adapting back and forth, both on the mental stage and the physical stage, right? Because mental and physical do play a big factor in fighting games. So, taking in all of these, are any of them the correct way we should be playing? No, none of them are. There's no right way to play fighting games. And that's why I've never liked the idea of calling someone random. Because a lot of people are just here to bring down your HP to 0. Whether or not they do it with you as a factor, that's up to them. We can't control that. A lot of people are not here to play fighting games with you. They're here to play for themselves. So then we have to ask ourselves, how do we learn from having to fight someone who's random? Because people like this are going to crop up at like your tournament experience or maybe your locals. So you got to eventually learn how to fight these people and win against them consistently. So how do we learn against them? Well, my way of learning how to fight against so-called random players is learning how to stick to your layer 1. So let's define exactly what is a layer in fighting games. So to start things off, we should probably define, before layering, the mental stack. I'll have the full description on screen. Shout out to the Fighting Game Glossary by Info. He's goat activities for making that. But to put it loosely, the mental stack is essentially how much you can put on your opponent, how much you've represented to them, and how well they can deal with it. Some people have a really good mental stack, some people don't. But because fighting games are all about being ready for what people can prepare for, the mental stack is really important. So how do we organize the mental stack into something more approachable? We have layers. And layer 1 is probably the most important thing you can have against a so-called random player. Because layer 1 is the information layer. That's where you really want to put in the work to see how a player is going to respond to you and your options. All right, so then how do we develop a layer 1? A layer 1, like I said earlier, is an information layer. So what I usually try to strategize is getting someone to do something about that layer 1. That layer 1 can have anything in it. I just need you to see how you respond, or a lack of response is enough information for me. What I really hate in fighting games is people who are clearly not thinking and just mashing on me, and they think they're nice for it. No, you're not nice because you guessed with a random 5p that you were mashing for 4 minutes during my block string, bro. You're not nice. Get out my lobby. But that's besides the point. So my layer 1 is built upon making sure people die from mashing. I always have my meaty set. I always know my frame traps, and I always know my setups that will not lose a mashing. I don't care if it loses to a DP. I don't care if it loses to a wake up super. I will try to read those later once I have the information. I just need someone to not mash on me, because then that's where the real game begins. So that's my layer 1. I set up my layer 1 to expose mashing. That can be done through meaties, frame traps, and whatever the hell else you've probably learned out from fighting games at this point. And that right there, having a defined layer 1 and having branching paths off that layer 1 is how you beat so-called random players. If you don't know what they're going to do not try to put so much effort into trying to read what they're going to do, because they clearly don't know what they're going to do. They're just there to get you tilted and make sure they can execute their game plan. That is the point of a random player. That's all there is. Yeah, they're going to get some hits in. You can't get a perfect round on them always, but you just got to roll with the punches. That's just how it is. It sucks, I know, but hey, that's life, man. That's life. So once we have this layer 1, it's up to the other player to finally respond and choose. Do I want to die because I'm going to keep committing to these random options? Or am I going to wisen up and try to adapt? That's where you finally get this adaptation upon adaptation that you get in really good fighting game sets. We kind of go back to that last point where the adrenaline rush for me of a good fighting game match is people adapting back and forth to my options and me adapting back to their options. That's how you know we got some good fighting games right there. So I know it sucks, but if you really want to be a so-called random player, you got to get that defined layer 1. And then once you have that information from that layer 1, you have to choose whether or not you want to move on to layer 2 or no. If layer 1 is more than effective at beating them, do not get off that layer 1. I cannot stress this enough, because it's also the mid-level trap where once people have the idea of layering, they will put their more advanced strategies that, they labbed, or more advanced combos that they labbed into like their further layers. Don't do this against someone who's not gonna respect that. You should only be trying to do that once you are confident in your reads and your mind games that you can go for this without the potential risk of them just matching on it. Because a lot of times, those more advanced things, they have very clear weaknesses of just being matched on and being like, sorry if I'm rambling. Like, how do I say it? It's so hard to land these really cool combos because they have certain conditionals that can only be reached under said conditionals. And most of those conditionals you're not going to get from someone who's mashing on you, because you got to set it up, you got to make sure I did spacing, blah, 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 blah. That's why the layer 1 is so important. It's boring to fight a random player sometimes because you just labbed this super cool thing off this super cool setup, but it requires them to block like the first 2 hits of a string. And they're just not going to do that. They're just not going to do that, bro. Stop trying to play chess with people trying to play checkers. That's just how it is. That's how it is. So that's my biggest advice for getting over the mental hurdle of fighting random players. Well, I say mental, but a mental and like gameplay sense of fighting a random player. Now, of course, this isn't like a catch-all situation. Like if you find someone who's just like going crazy on the 6 or always representing something different, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit more. But that's like my baseline, just so you can stay sane against a random player. Having that layer 1 and sticking to it and seeing how they respond from there is how you beat those guys. Because you just gotta cage in the monkeys, bro. That's a little wild to say, but there are some gorillas on that play, bro. There's gonna be gorillas in fighting no matter what. Because a lot of people aren't trying to like hyper focus on getting better, which I think is also another mid-level player trap that hopefully I'll get to talk to in another video. Because a lot of people are just there to have a good time. They just want to see their character do cool stuff. They don't care about the other character on the screen. They do not care, bro. Seriously, they don't care. They're just here to do their cool stuff. And they're there to hopefully get you mad that you can't do your cool stuff because they're so random, per se. But like I said at the beginning of the video, there's no correct way to play fighting games. There's certain ways you should be trying to improve at fighting games. And there are definitely certain ways you'd be trying to win that'll lead to improvement and betterment of a player. But there's no correct way to play these games. And that's kind of the magic of it, because like a conversation, anything can be said in there. How people respond back and forth is up to them. It's all about their own personalities, and it's all about their own like headspaces. It's all about like everything they have to bring to the table. And I think fighting games are very much the same way. Fighting games are conversation, and whether or not that conversation actually gets through to the other person is very dependent on the two people involved. So that's kind of all I wanted to say on the topic. Hopefully I can get to talking about this more, but getting my thoughts out on this and getting my general stance on this has been really freeing. Moving on though, something I really want to stress about these videos going forward is that my opinion is probably not even the right opinion. Whether or not you can have a right opinion, I guess. But that I'm just putting in my input. So something I really want to put emphasis on is that I want this to be a discussion. I want other people in the comments, if this video blows up, to put in their ideas of how to deal with someone who's random per se, or maybe other troubles you've had on netplay. What else? At locals, trying to get better at fighting games wherein people feel like they have a rut, or maybe they run into an issue again and again. I want to get some talking about, because like fighting games are so cool, and I think improving at them is also really cool. And talking about improving is really cool. Can't stress enough how cool this genre is. So yeah, I think that's just about it from what I have to say. Once again, my tag is that I'm just gonna try and make more of these, get my thoughts out. Sorry for once again sounding like I was rambling this entire video if you sat all the way through it. This was hella unscripted. Speaking from the heart here. Going forward, I'll try to script more. I'll try to, sound more clean, get the audio up, get my words up, get my vocab up. As you probably hear, I slurred some of my words. That's something I have when I speak. But yeah, that's kind of about it. Another Escaping from Mid-Level Hell video will also be going with this one. If I can get it done in time, it should be right here. And goodbye.